Before we start, let me ask you something. What if you could improve your English just by listening to a story? No pressure, no boring rules. Welcome to Eglish Error Lab. Here, you learn English through meaningful stories. So relax, listen carefully, and let the story begin. My name is Eleanor, and I am 64 years old. I live alone now in a small rented apartment at the edge of town. It is not a sad place, but it is a quiet one. At night, the rain taps softly on the glass, and an old clock on the wall counts time in slow, patient seconds. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Sometimes that sound feels louder than my own thoughts. I spent most of my life surrounded by music, by children, by noise and laughter, so this silence was not always easy for me. For more than 40 years, I taught music. Piano mostly. I taught children how to sit straight, how to place their fingers gently on the keys, how to listen before they played. I told them that music was not about speed or perfection, but about feeling. Parents trusted me. They left their children in my care, believing I would guide them not only in music but in discipline, patience, and heart. People in town used to say I was wise. I believed them. I truly thought I understood life, love, and family. But there is one lesson I failed to teach. The most important one, that I loved my daughter more than my own life. I gave her everything I had. My strength, my time, my savings, my future. And in the end, she did not want my love. She wanted what I owned. She wanted numbers, documents, walls, and land. I once believed that blood was stronger than anything else. I learned very late in life that money often speaks louder than love. This is the story of how my daughter walked out of my life, and how life, in its strange and painful way, brought her back to my door. My husband died when my daughter, Clara, was only 5 years old. One day he was there, fixing a loose shelf and laughing at his own jokes, and the next day he was gone. A sudden illness. No warning. No goodbye. After that, it was just Clara and me against the world. We lived in a large old house on Willow Lane. It was not modern or beautiful by magazine standards, but every corner carried a memory. Laughter in the hallway. Pencil marks on the doorframe showing how fast Clara was growing. In the center of the living room stood my most precious possession, an old upright piano. Its wood was scratched, its keys slightly yellow with age, but its sound was warm and honest. Clara grew up on the piano bench. I can still see her small legs swinging because they could not reach the floor. I remember her tiny fingers searching for the middle key, pressing the wrong notes, then laughing as if the piano itself had told her a joke. She used to look at me with shining eyes and promise that one day she would buy me a palace, so I would never have to work again. Those words kept me standing on days when my back ached and my hands burned from teaching lesson after lesson. I worked endlessly. From early morning until late evening, children came and went. My fingers hurt, my shoulders were stiff, but I never complained. I bought Clara the best books, the best clothes I could afford, and later, the best education. I wore the same coat for years so she could have new shoes. I skipped meals so she could join school trips. I told myself that sacrifice was love, and love was enough. Clara was clever. She admired my dedication, but she did not want my life. Music was not her dream. She wanted success, power, and recognition. She wanted numbers, deals, and big cities. When she told me she wanted to study business and finance, I felt a small sting of disappointment, but it was quickly replaced by pride. I paid for her university. I sent her to the city with money I had saved coin by coin. I told her to be brave. Years passed. Clara graduated. She became a real estate consultant. She wore sharp suits and spoke confidently about markets and investments. When she drove back to town in her shiny car, neighbors whispered about how successful she was. Then she brought a man home. His name was Victor. He was charming in a polished way. He smiled often, but his eyes felt empty, like windows to rooms that had never been lived in. He spoke about money as if it were a living thing, something to respect and obey. They married quickly. I told myself not to worry. Children grow up. Lives change. That is normal. But slowly, something else changed too. Clara visited less. When she came to the old house, she did not sit at the piano. She did not ask how my health was. Instead, she walked from room to room, her eyes measuring walls and floors. She whispered to Victor, and I heard words that did not belong in a home. Location, value, potential. That I felt a quiet coldness settle in my chest, but I ignored it. She was my daughter. Surely love was still there. One Sunday, they came for dinner. I cooked Clara's favorite meal, roasted chicken with herbs, and baked an apple pie the way she loved as a child. I waited all day, excited like I used to be before her school performances. But when they arrived, they barely touched the food. Victor set down his fork and spoke calmly, too calmly, about my future, about safety, about practicality, about how the house was too big, too old, too expensive for someone my age. Clara stared at her plate. They showed me glossy papers with smiling elderly faces in clean, bright rooms. A community, they called it. Safe, controlled, convenient. They spoke as if the decision had already been made. When Victor walked over to my piano and tapped its wood, calling it useless clutter, something inside me cracked. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the dark and played the piano. My hands shook. The melody was slow and heavy, full of questions I did not yet dare to ask. Was I a burden? Was my life now an obstacle to be moved aside? 2 weeks later, they returned with documents. And that was the moment I realized this story was not about care or concern at all. It was about something else entirely. And I was standing right in the middle of it, without knowing yet how much it would cost me. That evening, after they left, I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the kitchen with my coat still on, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. My hands were cold, but my mind was burning. I told myself they were right. I told myself they were worried about me. That was easier than facing the truth slowly forming in my chest. Age has a way of making you doubt your own instincts. You start asking permission from people who once asked permission from you. A few days later, Clara called me. Her voice was cheerful, light, almost relieved. She spoke about how stressful her job was, how busy life in the city had become, how hard it was to balance everything. Then carefully she mentioned the papers again. Just to look at them, she said. No pressure. Only options. I agreed. I do not know why. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe that love was hidden somewhere inside those pages. When they came back, I made tea. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if my body already knew something my heart had not fully accepted. As the kettle boiled, I carried the cups toward the living room. The door was not completely closed. I heard voices. They thought I was still in the kitchen. Her voice sounded different then. Sharp. Focused. excited. She said she was sure I would sign, that I was tired, that I trusted them. Then Victor laughed softly, the way people laugh when they already see victory. He spoke about timing, about profit, about how quickly everything would move once my name was on the page. He spoke about a new apartment, about investments, about opportunities. He spoke as if I were not a person but a final step in a plan. The tray shook in my hands. The tea spilled slightly, dark drops falling onto the floor like stains that could not be wiped away. I stood there, unseen, unheard, and something inside me finally broke cleanly in two. It was not loud. It was quiet. Like the moment a string snaps inside a piano, that I returned to the kitchen and poured the tea down the sink. I did not confront them. I did not cry. I understood something very clearly in that moment. If I stayed, I would slowly disappear. They would smile, they would wait, and they would count the days until I was no longer an obstacle. The next morning, I told them I would sign. Clara looked relieved, almost happy. Victor smiled with satisfaction. My hand did not shake as I wrote my name, but I added one condition. I said I would not go where they wanted me to go. I would find my own place. And I said I was taking the piano. Victor laughed and waved his hand, as if I had asked for a broken chair. Clara did not look at me. 2 days later, the movers came. I packed very little. Clothes, books, old photographs. I watched as they carried the piano out, its legs wrapped in cloth, its weight heavy with memory. When everything was done, Clara stood by the door, holding the keys. I looked at her face, searching for the child I raised. I saw only a woman waiting to move forward. I placed the keys into her hand. The metal felt cold. I told her not to look for me, not because I hated her, but because I needed to survive. That I left without turning back. That a year passed. My new apartment was small and plain, but it belonged to me. I placed the piano near the window. I began teaching again, quietly, to children whose parents could not pay much. Music filled my rooms again, slowly stitching my heart back together. I did not call Clara. She did not call me. Then rumors reached me. Bad investments. Lost money. A man who disappeared when there was nothing left to take. One rainy evening, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Clara stood there, soaked, thinner, older, holding nothing but regret in her eyes. That I stepped aside and let her in. And in that moment, I knew the final lesson of my life was about to begin. I closed the door behind her, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Water dripped from her coat onto the floor, each drop loud in the silence. She looked around the room slowly, as if she were entering a place she had once dreamed about and then forgotten. Her eyes stopped at the piano. I saw her throat tighten. That I offered her a towel. She took it with shaking hands. She tried to say my name, but it came out broken, unfinished. I did not rush her. Some words need time to find courage. She finally sat on the edge of the chair, her shoulders bent forward, no longer tall, no longer sure. She told me everything without being asked. How the money disappeared faster than promised. How Victor changed once there was nothing left to gain. How the apartment was sold. How friends vanished. How silence followed her everywhere. She said she had knocked on many doors before coming to mine. Each door had stayed closed. That I listened. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with a calm I did not expect. When she finished, she looked at me like a child waiting for punishment or forgiveness. I realized then that I no longer had the power to destroy her, and she no longer had the power to destroy me. We were simply two women sitting in the quiet, facing the truth from opposite sides. She asked if she could stay for a few days. Her voice was small. I did not answer immediately. I walked to the piano instead. I lifted the lid and pressed one key. The sound filled the room, steady and clear. Music has a way of telling you who you are now, not who you were. I told her she could stay. Not forever. Not to rebuild old illusions. Only to rest. Only to breathe. I made it clear that my life was no longer something to be borrowed or managed. She nodded quickly, grateful, ashamed, relieved. That night, as she slept on the sofa, I lay awake thinking about love. How it changes shape as we age. How sometimes love is sacrifice, and sometimes love is distance. In the morning, I made breakfast. We ate quietly. The days passed gently. She helped around the house. She listened when I played the piano. Sometimes she cried without sound. Sometimes she smiled at memories that no longer hurt as much. One afternoon, she told me she was leaving. She said she had found a small job, a shared place. She said she needed to stand on her own feet again. I saw strength returning to her eyes, not the greedy kind, but the honest kind. When she hugged me goodbye, it was the first time in years her arms felt real. After she left, I sat by the window and watched the street grow dark. I did not feel empty. I felt complete. I understood then that losing everything had not broken me. It had freed me. That I returned to the piano and played softly, letting the notes travel through the room, through my body, through the years behind me. I was no longer someone waiting to be chosen, moved, or decided for. I was home, and that was enough.